So what happens when you combine a simple, common tool that I bet you already have one or two of in your bathroom drawer right now with labor? Well, today you're going to learn and you're going to get one more awesome tool to have in your toolbox so that when labor comes, you're going to deal with it like a champ and have your birth God's way. Ready to hear what it's all about? Let's go. Happy New Year, you guys. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you're joining me on the day this is posted, it is New Year's Eve of 2024. This year has flown by, and I just can't even believe that we're sitting here looking at another new year starting. But instead of a review today, I just want to take some time to give you guys a review because I want you to know how important all of you are to me. Each and every one of you who are listening is so special to me. You are a part of a journey that I never even really knew was going to happen, obviously. And I am getting the honor of being a part of your journey. And I'm hearing so many stories from you guys about how your labor stories have changed, your birth stories have changed because of what you've learned here. And I just want you to know that it blesses me. It just lights me up and encourages me. And so thank you to all of you who have taken the time to tell me your stories, those of you who have taken the time to leave a review. You have been the fuel that keeps this train going. Starting on, coming up on January the 3rd, that is our 2-year anniversary. It's the 2-year birthday of Your Birth God's Way. That is the day 2 years ago that I posted my very first episode. And now I'm on, I don't even know, 120 something. But I just want to thank you all so much for being a part of this journey. You are the reason that I do it. I'm so happy to hear how many of you are changing your focus and putting it back on God and knowing that He designed you for this process. This is not something to suffer through in dread. This is something to draw you nearer to Him and to honor Him by working with His design because He designed you perfectly. You don't need to turn to some outward man-made force to help you. You just need to turn to God because God created you. He's the one who knows how your labor is going to go. He knows what you need, and He has promised to provide it when you rely on Him and when you put your faith in Him and when you live according to His will. So thank you all for being here with me. Today, I'm excited to share with you a tool to put in that tool bag that you take with you into labor. One thing that everybody needs to be able to walk through birth the way God intended them to is full education, to fully understand the way this whole process works. And you get that through the online Christian childbirth education course, which I hope that you've taken. I know many of you have, but you listening to me right now, this may be the first you've heard about it. I offer a childbirth education course that covers everything under the sun and also offers a live question and answer session with me monthly. I say monthly. Those of you who are in the course now know that these holidays have made that a little hard and the monthly thing's been a little tough, but I'm going to do better in 2025. But I'm always available to help you once you're inside of that course. But there's also other tools out there that are very helpful. And today I want to talk to you about one that is cheap and it is simple, and you are not going to believe that something so small and so simple can be so helpful. Today I'm talking with Rachael Nalley of MaternaBirthCo. Sorry, I said it wrong, MaternaBirthCo. And she is going to share with you a simple tool. Like I told you before, you probably already have several of these in your bathroom drawer right now, but that doesn't mean that you're not going to want to get the one that she offers because she has designed this to perfectly fit your hand. Yes, this is something that goes in the palm of your hand, and it uses acupressure to help you cope with the sensations of labor. You don't want to numb labor away. You want to feel it because it helps you to work with your baby and work with God's design so that you can help your baby come down in the best way possible. But those sensations are still tough. They're still strong. They're still intense. And so when we can have some simple tools that don't alter or numb those sensations, but rather give you coping mechanisms to get through them, we want to learn about them and see if maybe that's something that would work well for us. So that's what we're doing today. We're talking to Rachael Nalley of MaternaBirthCo. She's going to tell you all about it. So without further ado, let's jump in. Rachael, thank you so much for being with me today. I'm so excited to learn more about you and kind of your special little thing about the labor world that I think a lot of people aren't really aware of. So, first, for my audience, just kind of tell them who you are and a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for having me on. I love following your account and it's super cool when you reached out to me. I was excited to connect with you. So I'm Rachael Nalley. I'm here in Greenville, South Carolina. I have four little kids from 3 months old to seven. And I got interested in birth work when I was pregnant with my oldest, so about 7 years ago. I fell in love with birth just through learning about birth. Like I was shocked in my own personal journey of how little education there was until the point I found out I was pregnant. I knew nothing about pregnancy or labor or birth, even though I was the third kid of six. My mom had six kids, and I didn't know anything about how birth worked. And that led me on a journey to discover how I could set myself up for success when it came to birthing, and that we chose to go with some midwives in Colorado. And it was a really amazing experience that led me to really find a passion and love for natural birth. And I had to be induced with my oldest for some medical reasons. We couldn't find her heartbeat at 37 weeks, which it was truly a miracle that God allowed me to keep that appointment that day. I'll never forget it. I almost canceled it and I went to it and we couldn't find her heartbeat. Long story short, I was able to be induced instead of an emergency C-section. I had an option there, and I just had so much peace to go with the induction route. And I'm so grateful that I had the option. And even though I had to be induced and I felt like my plans were just like being thrown out the window, I was still able to accomplish having an unmedicated as far as pain management. So I didn't have an epidural or anything like that. And I'll never forget, like the nurses, this was a hospital birth with midwives, and the room like filled with so many people. And they were like, how did you do that? Like, how did you not have an epidural with Pitocin cranked up super high because they were really trying to get the baby out? And I had a super peaceful, calm birth. And I really believe it was because of the techniques that I had learned through working with an amazing friend of mine. You may have seen her, Corrine Brown. And she taught us all about acupressure in labor. And that's where my journey began with acupressure and moved on now to where I have a labor comb. That's my main product in the birth world. And, I'm a tried and true testimony 4 times now. Acupressure is my go-to tool that I use, and I have found that it's not really talked about much in the birth community using acupressure. I know there's so many different techniques you can use when it comes to managing pain and labor, but acupressure just isn't talked about very often. And it's something that I've used now 4 times successfully. And I tell everyone about it because it really is a unique practice to do. And I'm so glad we're having this conversation because it's not as simple as, oh, yeah, touch that point right there and you won't have any pain. Like, it's not a
Yeah.
magic button. Like, I don't want anyone to get that idea that you're just, all your pain will go away if you just hold your hand a certain way. Like, that's not how it works. So, yeah, that's kind of like a very, very summarized story of who I am and what I do.
Okay, and how long ago when was your first baby and what's our time
Yeah,
frame looking like?
so our daughter was born in 2016, sorry, 2017. So she's 7 years old. And I have a 5 year old, a 2 year old, and a 3 month old. And so when I was pregnant with my 2 year old, so that would have been in 2022, that is when I realized that I really had a calling for birth work. And it just the desire wouldn't go away to just encourage other moms, specifically Christian moms, desiring to have a natural birth. Because I found just in my own journey that there was a lot of unbiblical practices and things that really shied and scared me away from pursuing understanding my body because I didn't want to go down a path that wasn't going to honor God. And so I found that in my circles, most women were just staying away from natural birth altogether because they were like, oh no, like, am I going to get into something weird that's not honoring God? And so I just like fell in love with bringing the truth about women's bodies to believers to show them, no, this is how God designed the body, and this is how amazing it is. And
Yeah.
we're not perfect and mistakes can happen, but at the end of the day, I think a natural birth is a very beautiful picture of how God created us. And just when praying through labor and praising God through labor is some of the most beautiful moments that I will hold on to for the rest of my life.
Right. And there's really no aspect of birth or pregnancy or conception or any of it that you
Hmm.
can look at without just getting this awe of
Yes. Yeah.
how many things have to go perfectly. And then even the intricate details of each of those things that have to go perfectly. And it's so faith building. And that's actually part of what drove me to start this podcast was just, it felt like so many women were like, you got your faith over here
Mhm.
and then you got your birth over here.
Yes.
And we believe in God for seems like everything except for what did the doctor say? What did the doctor say? Did the doctor say I can do this? Can I? And I'm like, in what world? Like, why did we get to this point? And I think a lot of it is what you're saying. And first of all, not many Christians are talking about it
Hmm.
um, in this type of a platform.
Right.
So many of the people that you hear, anything about birth from are very like the new agey, like just,
Right.
it's just, and it's very, it's spiritual, but it's certainly
Yes.
not godly or biblical. And, and there was such a vacuum, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, but I'm like you, it's like the more you dig into it and the more you study it, it's just, there's so much that is just so beautiful to think about that he thought out
Hmm.
from the beginning. And it's just like it's mind-boggling. And it's also it's like you just want everybody to hear it because if you hear this, there's no way you can't believe in him. There's
Exactly.
you can't look at how two cells can become a person.
Hmm.
Like that
It's,
doesn't
yeah,
just
it's
happen. You know what I mean?
amazing. It's amazing. And then that he perfectly designed it, he prepared us to birth.
Right.
And
Right.
and I think, and I know this can sometimes come across as being mean to women who choose to go the medical route, but it's not at all. It's just sharing truth. Um, I truly believe that we're doing a disservice for women to think, oh, just bypass the birth experience, just get the
Yeah.
epidural, just get the C-section. And we're doing a huge disservice to bypass that because there's so much strength to be found in a natural birth.
Yes.
And specifically, and this is where I like to differentiate, we're not finding strength in ourselves, though. We're finding the
Exactly.
strength that God gives us. And I think, especially as believers, experiencing that is so beautiful. Like, why would you ever want to diminish that? Why would you ever? And it's just kind of like in life, like, this has been one of the hardest years in in our family's life, but so many beautiful things have happened through the hard.
Yes.
And it's like God uses those really hard situations and circumstances to draw us closer to Him.
Right.
And, you can apply that in birth. And I like to give this example that, when you're experiencing a contraction, the tendency can be to immediately like tense up and focus on it and put all your thought and energy into the pain of the contraction. And what happens when you do that? It's usually more painful
First.
and the contraction like lasts longer. It feels like it lasts longer
Mhm.
because you're putting all your attention there. But whenever we surrender and kind of like this posture of like, I'm not going to give in to that. Like, I'm going to allow my body to do what it's supposed to do. Like, this is a good thing. Like, my uterus is contracting to get my baby out of here. This is good. And we surrender to
Mhm.
that. Then what happens? We typically have less
And
pain and
exactly.
things progress quicker. And I think so often in life, like, how
That's
true is
life.
that? Like, when a
That's
trial comes, we're like, oh my goodness, I'm so mad. I'm so frustrated. And we tense up and it just doesn't make the situation go away. Like, it
That is
just makes
such
it,
a good parallel. I'd never really
yeah.
thought about that, but you are so right. The
Well,
more
and I
you
can share that
refine
parallel
it,
because it's true in my life. Like,
yes,
whenever a trial comes, if I surrender and like, God, you have placed this in my life and I'm going to give that to you and I'm going to trust you. What usually happens, you have calm and peace in the midst of that moment when it doesn't,
yep,
when you tendency is to just like get really frustrated, and that's not going to help the situation. So,
It's the peace that passes understanding.
hmm
And we don't, and the whole struggle thing, it's like, if you want to get stronger, you got to go to the gym and lift some weights. You
hmm
got to have resistance, and it's got to get a little heavier and a little heavier and a little harder, or you stop.
yeah,
And that, I mean, there's so many parallels there. Like
there's so many parallels.
if you skip the struggle, you skip so much good. Oh man,
hmm
that's so good. Okay, I could that's a podcast all by itself. Um, so okay, so you mentioned acupressure and how that kind of
hmm
came into your purview at some
Yes.
point, obviously before you had your first.
Yes.
And so tell us a little bit about that journey. I know that like you were trying different things and you weren't finding really what you needed, wanted, what you liked out there, and then you kind of just made your own. So tell us about
Yeah.
that. Tell us about that journey.
Yeah. So, like I said, when I first, I went through a course with Corrine Brown. She has Love Your Labor.
Mhm.
And my husband and I, it was like our college education. Like we went through that, took notes. My husband did it with me. And in that, we learned all about using acupressure in labor. And one of the things she said was have a comb. So it wasn't called a labor comb. It was just a comb. Like go get your hair comb and put it in your labor bag and squeeze it. So just squeeze it in the palm of your hand like this. All right. And so I was like, well, it
We're,
says it. And then,
just real quick,
yeah.
because this is an audio podcast.
Oh, okay. Yeah. No,
There
you're
will be
good.
a video, but she's got it turned to where
hmm
like the teeth of the comb are
The
kind of
teeth, yep,
right in
come.
the what would you call that? Like the
The crease of your palm.
crease, like the in like kind of the pad of your finger below the pad of your palm below your fingers,
Yes. Yep. That's a great way to describe it.
and then fingers
S-
are wrapped around the spine
mhm.
of it.
Yeah. Imagine you're squeezing a tennis ball
Yeah.
with the teeth being pressed against the palm of your hand.
Right. Okay.
So that so I just like saw that in the notes of like what to do. And so I brought that with me. And like I said, I had Pitocin without an epidural. And I remember telling my husband, like, oh, hand me that comb. And so he handed me the comb. And we also learned 9 other acupressure points. And my husband, like, this was not something, and this is what I want to be very clear about when people are hearing about this for the first time. This is not something that you can just like learn the day of going into labor and it be effective. This is something that you need to study and know where these points are in your body because they're going to be a little nuanced based off of everyone's body. So for some people, it might be a little bit to the left of the shoulder, a little bit to the right. So it's nuanced. And so practicing that before you go into labor, my husband and I actually brought a skin marker with us, and he would mark the places on my body. There's about 9 that can be used for labor. And he knew exactly where they were. And then you find that you get your favorites. And so for all 4 births, and so this last one, I mean, he was a pro at that point, and
Right.
he knew that the base of my foot was my favorite. Like I call that nature's epidural because
Yeah.
I have video of me being like, push harder. So what's really awesome though about the comb is an acupressure point that you don't have to study. You can literally just grab the comb, put it in your bag because your hand has so many points and the teeth of the comb is going against, and I know this is audio, so I'll try to explain it.
Well,
Um,
hey, if you're listening on audio, go find it on
Go
YouTube and you'll be
find it.
able to
Yes,
see
and
it.
then you
There
can
you go.
see. That's great. So you have acupressure P9 in the palm of your hand. So if you make a loose fist and
Okay.
your middle finger, if you press that, you can might even feel it. It's very
Feels like
sensitive.
a tender spot.
Tender.
Yeah, I feel okay.
Yes, very tender.
Yeah.
That is the acupressure point that is being triggered with the comb, as
Okay.
well as all the receptors in your hand. So one of my best friends actually was worked with brain surgeons, and she knew about this idea called the gate. Are you familiar with the gate control?
I remember studying the gate theory of pain or something like that. Is that what it
Yeah.
is? Yes.
So
Okay.
the gate theory of pain, it explains how non-painful sensory inputs like pressure and touch, so
Mhm.
acupressure, it can close off the gates to the
Okay.
painful. So what we're doing here is the pain of the contraction is, how do we get pain? Well, the receptor, our body is going to our brain and saying like, "Hey, this is painful." And so basically, by squeezing the labor comb, we're able to bypass some of that pain. And I never want to paint a picture that it erases that you can't feel your this is not an epidural. Like
Right.
we're not erasing pain, but it's kind of like the idea of if you have a toothache and you're really like focused on your tooth, like, man, this my tooth is really hurting, and then you stub your toe, all of a sudden you don't feel the pain in your tooth, right? Like why? Because you're like, oh my goodness, my toe, like my toe
Right.
hurts. And it's that concept. That's like the most.
So it's kind of similar to the saline, the subcutaneous saline injections, the same concept, totally
Yes.
different application.
As well as like the TENS unit is doing the same thing.
Okay.
It's
Yeah.
essentially distracting from the contraction to a different area, and most women are like, I would much rather have the
Yeah.
palm of my hand feel
Yeah.
pressure than the pain of the contractions.
Right.
We have sold over 2,000 of these now, and I'll share how I launched the product and why I made this specific comb. But I do want to make a quick note because it still amazes me that such a simple tool like this
Mhm.
has such a huge response. And I will get moms that are like, I had to have a C-section, an unplanned C-section. I carried this with me all the way into the OR. I have moms that say, I did not let go of this the entire time. And so many moms give us such good feedback about how it calmed them, how it was just that, we usually like to squeeze our husband's hands or
Right.
like do something with our hands. Well, this just gives an extra benefit because it's applying the pressure to the P8 pressure point that is going to help with redirecting the pain.
Makes
So
so much sense.
yeah, and I will say most moms, and there's some people are like, oh, I hated that, and they, throw in the trash can. Very rarely does that happen. Like I would say on average, most people found it to be very helpful up until transition. Typically at transition, that's when they got rid of the comb or, and you know that. Like you know how women
Yeah.
are.
That
And
was my last episode was transition. It was like
yeah,
how
okay.
everything's just out the window and you're
Yeah.
gonna and all the things and you're done and you're against the wall and you think you're never gonna make it. It's because you're there.
Yeah, it's
But
because you're there.
but the game plan is like, that's when so many people abandon ship because they
Yeah.
think they're like, I can't do this anymore. They have no idea. It's just they're
Just
almost
right there.
there. Yeah.
I have videos of every single my births, and every single time I say, this is my least favorite part. And then I know I'm almost there. I'm like
Almost there.
almost there. So my home birth, my most recent one 3 months ago, I actually had two of these in my hand. So I originally launched it with just one. But I'm thinking about getting a pack with two because I was actually squeezing both of them under the water and just fully focused. Like I didn't make any sounds when he came out. It was a really a beautiful moment. And
Wow.
I remember having both my hands under the water and I had my eyes closed and I was just breathing him out and I had both of my palms squeezing the labor comb and I was just praying and breathing him out. And then all of a sudden my midwife is like, he's here. And I was like, what? Like, oh
What?
wow, like what? It was wild. I was like,
That is awesome.
yeah, he came it was insane. She was like, I remember hearing my midwife say, um, oh, there's his head. And then literally within seconds, it was, there's your baby. I was
Yeah.
like, what? So, why I made this specific comb is because I had 3 births with just a comb from Amazon. And
Mhm.
specifically my third child, I bought a pack of combs off Amazon. Like, oh, I'll have all the options. And I remember in labor being really frustrated and annoyed with the combs. And I just kept being like annoyed with them. And I'm like, I know the benefit of these. I've used it, 2 times already. This was my third time. Like, this is really frustrating. And at that point, I was an Amazon product developer. And so I would help businesses launch products on Amazon. And so I was very familiar with manufacturing, product development. And my friends said to me, because I was telling everyone, like, make sure you have make sure you have a comb in your bag. And my friend's like, why don't you make a labor comb? And I was like, what? That's crazy. Like, you can just buy a comb at the store. And she's like, yeah, but you were really annoyed. Like, what if you made one that was specifically designed for labor and no one had to guess anymore? Like, it's such a simple, powerful tool, and it is
Right.
so effective. make one that, so that's when I started designing it, and I came up with this design to, I made the strap, and I literally held over 100 combs, and there was not a single comb that I liked. And so I had this edge here made, and it just makes it easier to squeeze. So I'd like to say, like, this
Mhm.
comb is designed for labor. It's not just a comb off the shelf. It was specifically designed with moms in mind in labor from my experience. And yeah, people, it's funny though, if you go to Amazon, when I put this on Amazon, it was the only comb on Amazon for labor. And now, unfortunately, I have a lot of copycats.
Yeah.
So, Materna Birth is the official labor comb. Unfortunately, those knockoffs are not people who know or understand what we're doing here. They just literally copied my branding and everything. So, to get the official one, it's this one right
Mhm.
here. Um, so that's how it happened. I was like, okay, I'm gonna go for it. And I did not know if anyone would buy this thing. I was like, it's a unique comb for labor. We'll see what happens. I
Right.
launched it a year and a half ago, and it just took off like crazy. And I found that it's such a simple tool that can be such a blessing to so many moms in labor. And it has been really, anytime I have been tempted to stop talking about it, I'll get another message from a mom saying, "Thank you so much for making this. This helped me so much." So, yeah, it's a fun tool to have. Does it guarantee no pain? Absolutely not. I'll have some reviews that are like, I still had pain. You're still going to experience the sensations of
Mhm.
labor. They're not going to take them away. But it's just a nice, tangible piece that you can squeeze and focus on that helps with those contractions.
It's a coping tool.
Yeah.
It's just, and as with so much stuff, you learn a lot of techniques when you go
Yes.
through education, and some work and some don't for each
Exactly.
person. And what works for one doesn't necessarily work as well for the other. And that's okay. And so much of it has to do with so many factors. It's kind of like, one position feels great for one mom, and the other mom is like crawling out of her skin. She can't be in it, because of the positioning of the baby and her body and where she's at in labor. So you can't expect to be a miracle, like, oh, it's like you said, an epidural. Not that, we're not saying epidural is the great thing. It's just like it does take away the pain, but it takes away a lot of other stuff too. But it's a tool, and and one of the things I think, and I talked about this in my episode about transition, is one of the reasons why transition is a good time is because you finally get to do something. Like
Yeah.
you've just had to be completely inactive, basically.
Mm.
Because if you are active, you're fighting the process, like we talked about earlier. So I think this is kind of a neat tool too, because you are able to do something to help you.
Right.
Like even if it's just that squeezing. I heard this, I think, something on your Instagram. You added the strap because you
Yes.
have a contraction, and then it'd be over and you throw it down, and then
Yeah.
the next one comes and you don't have it. So that's a really neat design thing that you added in there.
Yeah, and I did that because I kept losing it in the hospital when I was having my hospital births. I was like, where's that comb? And I was like, you don't need that distraction.
Right.
And this has been proven to float in the birth pools. So it does
Awesome.
float, so it's not going to
Is
sink
it
to the
is
bottom.
it made out of wood? It looks
Yes.
wooden to me. Yeah.
Yep, it's wood.
Okay.
So it's a
Very cool.
very lightweight wood. So it floats, and yeah, it's really cool. And going back to just like the acupressure, because that is what it's taking advantage of.
Right.
And so I encourage, if moms who are pregnant who are interested in that, and you made a really good point. What works for one mom isn't going to always work for the other
Right.
person. And so I think that's really important to keep in mind with any coping plan you have.
Right.
Like if that's what you are depending on, like you can't depend on everything, like that.
Right.
But I will say, finding a doula in your area or a midwife even who understands acupressure in labor, I do think it's something that needs to be talked about more because yes, the comb is the easiest one to do because it's applied pressure to the palm of your hand. Everyone can do that. Everyone can pick up the comb and squeeze it. But when it comes to the other acupressure points, that does take learning. And your spouse, my husband learned all of them, and I joke he knows them better than I do because he was the one applying them for 4 births. um, but those pressure points are ones that you do have to study before you go into labor because you need to know how your body responds to them. And it's like those tender feelings, those tender tingling feelings, you know where they are, how your body responds, and prepare and train for that before you go into labor. But um, I use those like my husband would apply for hours during my contractions. And it really did relieve so much of the pain with having the different acupressure points at work. So I like to say that labor comb is a great, great tool, and I think everyone should have it in their birth bag. But that with the other acupressure points is even better.
Even better. You got me wishing that I was having more so I could like try this stuff out and see if it works for me. You know, you say you were silent. I was not. I was the opposite of silent. Um, but that's just, again,
That's okay
everybody's
though.
different. We all
Yeah.
labor differently. And
Yeah.
yeah, I was not quiet at all. But I would love to like have the labor comb and just see, like, does that make me quiet? That work out?
Yeah.
So, so is there anything else that you would like to share with us? Anything else about the process or that you think that the listeners would like to know? I have my audience, they crave good information. They're
Mm,
they're you know they're tired of the junk out there, and so
yeah.
they crave good information, solid information, and truthful information because they just
Hmm.
feel like they're getting the runaround. So anything that you would like to share, tell us about where they can find you or learn more about your products and all that kind of stuff. Just some closing thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely. So my main presence is on Instagram. So right now it's MaternaBirthCo on Instagram. I will give a warning. I am rebranding soon, so the name will be changing soon. But at this time, it's MaternaBirthCo, and hopefully it will still index for that. And yeah, my page is all about talking about birth from a physiological standpoint through a Christian perspective. And I love connecting with other Christian birth workers, but I also love learning from people who may not necessarily say they're a believer and learn because I think that they again going back to what we discussed earlier, truth is truth. And I have learned some of the most amazing things about how birth works from people who aren't believers. And I love to take that information and then filter it through the lens of a biblical perspective. And so I think there's a lot of amazing things to learn because, again, going back to, you know, I have found just in my walk with the circles of different churches I've been a part of, so many women tend to just go to the authority of the doctor, of the MD. Oh, the doctor said this, the doctor said that. I'm going to respect the doctor's authority and do what the doctor says.
Right.
And so I'm a rebel in the Christian world of not like being thankful for medical intervention when necessary. I've had to take advantage of that. I'm so grateful for that. But looking into how our body is designed and seeing like it's I think again, it is okay to hope and dream for the best and to try to achieve that and to do that in a way that honors the Lord. And if you don't get the outcome you want, it doesn't mean that that is broken or that you failed. We can be grateful that we have this ability to birth to, for 9 months, your body was giving that baby exactly what it needed. It
Mhm.
doesn't stop working the moment
Yeah.
it goes into labor.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Yeah. I agree with you. Some of the people that I've learned the most from are
Hmm.
not Christian, and you learn so much, and you hear them say nature this and
Hmm.
nature that, and it's just like they believe, they just don't even know they believe. Like
Right.
what
Yeah.
you call nature is God.
Hmm.
It's not nature that made everything work out perfectly.
Right.
And so you're right though, because when you take this information that is truthful,
Hmm.
but then you look at the physiology behind it and the designer, the great designer behind it. It's a beautiful, like I said earlier, a faith building process, and it's a lot of what I do here too. It's like taking it and looking at the reality of the system and the
Hmm.
reality of how everything kind of works, but then remembering that God's the designer of all this, rather than looking to man and his attempt to understand it. Let's look to God and the mind of God and how he designed us, because he's the one that
Yeah.
put us together. I'll say this, like, you've got a Chevrolet, you don't go to a Ford manual to figure out a Chevrolet. You go to
Right.
the right thing for the right, you know, machine in that case. Well, if we are God's creation, let's go to him. And when you look at, just like I said earlier, I mean, just, one of my favorite examples is your finger, because right here is dead, hard, with no sensitivity at all on your
Hmm.
fingernail. Sorry, here I am on my own podcast showing, and they can't see. I'm pointing my fingernail. And then you just come over a little bit, and it's one of the most sensitive parts of your body, right next to each other. You know what I mean? That's
Yeah.
not an accident. There's a reason,
Wow.
and it's just, and you can do that for any part of your body, from the
Right.
way your vision works, to your smell, to your taste, to your
Hmm.
hearing, to it's just everywhere, how your liver works, how your kidneys work, everything. And then how, when we, getting off on another tangent, how when we feed our bodies what he
Hmm.
designed them to have, they work.
Yeah.
And by the way, if you want to learn more about bread, Rachel's on the bread bandwagon too. So when you go, she said, she was cute because she's like, my page is all about birth and all that, except for bread also. She's kind of
Except for
like
bread
me.
also. Bread and
Except for
birth
bread
and
also.
silly motherhood moments. Yeah.
Yeah, she does the fresh milled stuff also, so you can learn more about that over there as well. So be sure to go find her products, get you a birth comb for your birth bag. I'm gonna get one for my birth bag. I'm gonna tell my moms about it, because I think it's just very, again, I mean, God made those pressure
It's
points there.
simple and effective.
And we can use what he gave us
Hmm.
to benefit us. So
Yeah.
thank you so much for your time today, Rachel, and for joining me. And again, everybody, if you want to reach out to her, if you have any questions for her, just look for her on Instagram at MaternaBirthCo, or whatever it becomes after that. If you can't find her, if you're listening to this months down the road, you can't find her, shoot me a message. I'll help you find her. Okay. And again, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Wasn't that so cool? I hope you learned so much. I wish I had known about that when I had my babies. Makes me want to have another baby, to give it a try, to see how it works for me. And like she said, it may work for you. It's not 100%, because everybody is different, but my goodness, why not give it a try? It is inexpensive. It helps support another mom out there who is just like you, who saw a gap in the market where there was something that was needed and it didn't exist, and she made it happen. So if you are interested in picking up a labor comb from her, be sure you go down to my description section. I'm going to have a link directly to her product. There's been lots of people who have come around and kind of stolen her design and knocked it off, but we want to make sure we support her. She did the hard work. Let's make sure we put the dollars into her pocket. And in the meantime, you will get a product that might help you walk through this process so much better. What do you have to lose, really? This thing is so cool. So again, go down to the description, look for the link down there, go grab you a comb, grab one for your friend, grab one for your doula to put in her bag, grab one of your midwife and give it to her. Get you several of them. They are going to come in so handy. And I hope that you all have a lovely, lovely New Year's Eve evening. Stay safe. Don't get into anything you're not supposed to get into as Christian women. And I will see you right back here in the new year next week. Have a great day.